And we are live, I believe, with Mr. Lonetree. Uh-oh.
What up,
Hey,
it's Leedz.
what up? What up, Oak?
It's crack.
How we doing?
Good, man.
Is this a day off for you back there? It looks like there's like sunny mountains and what do you got back there? I can't tell.
No, don't get it twisted. I just got home 5 minutes ago. And,
Oh, you are suburbia.
yeah, I turned into Oak Lonetree with the hat and ready to talk for a little while.
Nice, nice. How's your connection? You good?
I can hear you great. Can you hear me good? Is the AC kind of interfering? Or
There's AC outside?
it is hanging outside of the window and it's right there, so I didn't know.
Yeah, it cuts a little bit, but I think we'll be all right. If it says we might have to change locations here, maybe, but we should be all right.
Let me know. I can move over here too, maybe be a little better.
Yeah, it's just a cutting. Um,
How about that? Any better?
that sounds great.
All right.
All right, I want to thank everybody for tuning in to the Leeds Edutainment podcast with very special guest, rapper, terrible cook, foreman,
Yeah,
Oak Lonetree. How are you?
I'm doing very well, sir. Thanks for having me. Always nice.
Absolutely. Absolutely, man. We've known each other for a good amount of time.
Couple of years.
Probably say, I think I've met you pretty early into my career. I was probably like 15 years ago, I'm thinking.
Yeah.
I remember it was
All of that.
outside. I remember you coming up to me. It was like outside which venue? I can't, there might have been McGann's or something,
I was
introducing yourself.
hands, yeah.
Yeah. But anyways, but yeah, since then we've worked together, personal, hip hop, all types of different things. And yeah, and here we are right now. And we got the show with the Dunnas coming up. You guys are opening up for performing with Easy Money on next Thursday. So I was like, I got to get these guys on here. You know, I've been meaning to get you on here and Dees on here. And I think like you guys' backstories are so extensive that I couldn't do it both at the same time because you guys have big, long solo careers. And I kind of want to go back to that a little bit because you really are the only rapper I know to rep Waltham. Let's talk about Waltham and growing up in Waltham.
How you doing? There's been a few other rappers to come out of Waltham actually, but I don't know if they rep as hard as your boy. You know, I'm not gonna front. You know, but yeah, I'm from Waltham. I was born and raised there, and I lived there till I was about 21, and then I moved out. I lived with my band for a few years, not too far from Waltham. Still lived close enough to still work in Waltham and hang out and party in Waltham all the time. So, and then bounced around a little bit, came back to another year or two in Waltham, and now I'm relocated down here in beautiful Newport, Rhode Island. So, but you know, I bring Waltham with me everywhere I go. So
Literally, it's tattooed on your skin. Can we see it for the there it is. There we go.
yeah, and then don't forget about that.
Oh yeah. That's what it is.
My mother
He got that he got that at 7 years old, so don't let him fool you. That's not a new tattoo.
My mother said, why'd you get that? So they know where to bring you when you die? I was like, yeah, Mom.
So I was like growing up in Waltham, you kind of grew up with a little bit of not a little, but a pretty big shadow, being the nephew of football player Fred Smerlas, right? Who's
Yep.
like, I'm not a big football guy, but I looked him up real quick, and it's like, what is he like? 5-time Pro Bowl player for the Buffalo Bills, nose tackle.
Yep, nose tackle, yep, 5-time Pro Bowl. I think he was NFL's strongest man maybe a year or two. But he had a good career in the league and finished with the Patriots. So you know, when I was a little kid growing up, like it was fun. Like, you know, like my family, my father and all his buddies and stuff, they'd be over there watching the games and drinking tequila, who's going to drink the worm out of the tequila, and, you know, just rooting they were just rooting for the Bills and rooting for him to see him win. And then I think he left the Bills. How you doing? He left the Bills the year before they went to 4 straight Super Bowls and, of course, lost all 4 of them. But, yeah, I mean, but, yeah, kind of casted a big shadow, and I think coming up, like, when I was early in my early music career, like, coming up, there was a little bit of a motivation to be like, I don't want to be in that shadow forever. I want to make a name for myself type thing. But I think that just kind of comes with like the eagerness and like hunger of like a young artist, where like I can't say I truly feel like that's a thing anymore for me now at my old age.
Ain't
Um,
that old?
getting there.
You're older.
A little
So
more.
was there pressure? Was there pressure on you to play football?
Oh
Because you're
yeah.
a big guy. Like you're a big guy like me. They must have been like this expectation of like you're going to be a football player, right?
Oh yeah. And I was the first Smerlas boy to go through Waltham school since Fred, well, and my uncle Chuck, who was Fred's younger brother. But then it was like, 25 years, 30 years, and then I was the first Smerlas of this generation. So they took one look at me and they were like, you know, they were eyeing me to play, and I played sports growing up. I played basketball, baseball, football, and I liked it. But when I got to high school, I became more interested in other stuff, and yeah, drinking, partying, girls, skateboarding, um, so like football wasn't really like on the top of the list, but I did play one year. I played my junior year and I like broke a couple fingers and I missed a couple games, and I think I might have ate a little bit of acid on the sidelines in one of the games, and so I wasn't taking it too serious, but
Yeah.
it was
I I
a career.
I I'm a big guy too, and they always wanted me to play. And I always pushed it off. And then senior year I played, and it was like the same thing. It was didn't really take it too serious. I was on the sideline taking acid, so it wasn't for me. I liked the sport. I played basketball, but I liked the team unity of football. I thought that was the best of any sport I played. But it's a tough freaking sport. Did you play lineman too?
Yeah, I was a D lineman and a little D end, but yeah, I mean, put it this way, I enjoy fantasy football better than playing football.
Yeah.
Now, but yeah, but it was fun. You know what I mean? It was cool to get out there, and like you said, like the team aspect, it kind of teaches you on how to like work with other people, and get out there and let out some of that like teenage angst and aggression and stuff. When you're that age, and I would love to see my son um, get into football. I mean, not only is it's in his genetics, but it's a great sport. It's a tough sport, and I know that it catches a lot of heat nowadays, where some parents are worried about their kids playing football. It's just such a high contact sport, but I don't know. I think it's a good sport. I think if he's into it, then why
Yeah.
not? If my daughter wanted to play football too, we let her get out there and smash a couple running backs or whatever.
Nice, dude. Nice. So, so football, whatever. When does the rapping come in? When does the rhyming in the woods in the name Oak Lonetree come into play?
Shortly after, to be the first song I actually did was for a book report in 8th grade. We had to do a book report, but just not like a regular book report. So I actually was friends with this kid Pat Rourke, and his brother is Adam Rourke, who recorded later on, and he recorded the Primary Others albums down in the Red Room. He's an unbelievable musician and engineer. But I was buddies with his brother Pat. So we said, why don't we do our report on this book, and we'll write a couple rhymes and do a song. So that's what we did. So that was kind of like my first experience. And he had like the closest thing to like a real studio down there, and it was cool. And I think he laid down the beat. He laid down some drums and maybe little keys, cooked us up a quick beat, and we did the rhyme, So that was the first one. And I'll never forget that. I remember writing the rhyme in his kitchen upstairs, and it was just something about it was just fun, and it kind of came natural. It never really had felt like I had done something that was like, whoa, that feels good, like to do that, like that just kind of came out. So obviously, after you feel that feeling, it's something that you want to pursue, and that's what I did as I got older. So I'd say quickly into high school, 9th, 10th grade, we couldn't exactly like freely drink wherever we wanted and party and do all that kind of stuff. So we were in and out of the woods, in and out of whoever's backyard, back porch, whose parents weren't home that was still at work, and we used to hang out in a section of Waltham called the Highlands. And so the woods were up there, Prospect Hill Woods were up there. And so we spent a lot of time up there. And, a lot of us were just hip hop kids and really into the music and the culture and skateboarders. But we ran with metalheads and punk rock kids too. So it was like a big mixture,
Yep.
But just a lot of music. And like Waltham, believe it or not, had a very like powerful and diverse music run in the 90s into the early 2000s. Like there was, of course, like Waltham, the band, Graveyard
Yep.
Barbecue, Morgan Knockers, even back to like earlier bands like Cross Current, Seventh Real Crew. There was a lot of hardcore bands. So we were not only like learning how to create our own music, but we were going to these shows at the IBW, Sons of Italy, and and then we started booking our own little shows, playing at the Boys Club and playing birthday parties and high school talent shows and shit like that. So that was kind of like the foundation how we started it all.
Yeah. So, when do you start Primary Others? Well, how old are you and when does that happen?
Well, Primary Others, before it was Primary Others, was called Primary Colors, and that was
Like
with
the movie? The John Travolta, Bill Clinton movie?
less political, but yeah, same. But we like it was me and another vocalist, White Mike, who I'm sure you know, who goes by the name Hunk Rock now, and so that was my guy. Like he was one of the dudes we were rhyming together in high school and stuff, and we, before Primary started, we had the keyboard from the dumpster that my father found in the dumpster behind my house that we named the Keys to Success. And it was like a little Yamaha keyboard, but you could make beats on it. You could make you could flip the country beat or the blues beat, the rock beat, So we started recording on this keyboard, and I had a tape recorder from CVS that you'd press record, and we play the beat on the keyboard next to it and just rhyme into the tape recorder. So like if you messed up on the third verse, you had to run it back.
Oh,
There was,
oh man.
there was no cool taste, and like you get to the very end, then you mess up a word, you're like, you gotta scratch that and start over. But so we started with that. We'd bring that keyboard and do shows with that thing. We'd plug that thing direct into the board, into the PA, and we'd rock those silly little keyboard beats live. And but then we were like, hey, maybe we could take it up a notch. And we had this kid Corey who played guitar. That was also one of our old school like Highland heads. And so we formed the group Primary Colors, and we started playing like that. We took a few of the songs that we did on the keyboard from the dumpster, and those were some of the early Primary songs too that made it onto the first album. But yeah, man, that was a really cool journey into how that whole thing kind of developed.
So
And
how many members were in the band at the end of Prime? Not the end, but like Prime 2004, 5. What's the group look like?
well, we had a few different lineups. So at first it was me and Mike and Corey, and then we had these two dudes that Corey knew. I don't know if they were like from Berkeley or somewhere, the kid's name was Cooper, and he played the stand-up bass. I remember, and then I think the drummer's name was Jesse, and they were really cool, kind of like earthy, crunchy dudes, but they were down, and so that was the original lineup. And then what's funny? What happened was we were playing as Primary Colors, and then we had a different lineup with Josh played bass and Paul was the new drummer. But we got an email from a Boston classic, Ray Fernandez.
Oh yeah.
Butter Beats.
Oh yeah.
And he wrote us this kind of like polite email saying, I see you guys out here playing as Primary Colors, and he goes, I was actually in a band called Primary Colors in like the 80s or something. And he's like, we're getting back together and we're looking to re-release some music. So he almost like politely asked if we would change our name. So like we're all like in our early 20s and like we think we're the shit, so we're like, who's this guy? Like we could change our name. But then we really thought about it and we were like, the way that he stepped to us was respectful, and I knew him from like recording with Ack and Skits, and like he was like
Yep.
a Boston OG, and
Oh yeah.
so we said, you know what? And I think we even did like a vote, like a poll, and opened it up to the fans and friends and stuff. Like, anybody have any good suggestions for our name? So we tossed a few other names around, and then we became Primary Others. So when we rocked with that lineup for a while, and then eventually we had a different guitar player and bass player. So had a couple different people in and out, but it was a fun run. We went from, I'd say, maybe when we started in 2000, 2001, up until like 2016. And then the last show we did was, I think it was a Leedz show.
Yep.
Middle East upstairs. I don't know if it was Camp Low or.
I think we did. I don't think you opened. I think you headlined your last show.
It was
I think it was.
The last show was the release party
Yeah.
for the second album. Is what
Yeah.
it was. And that
I
was.
mean, yeah. Go ahead.
No, that was it. That was the end.
Yeah. I mean, I remember you guys were putting in work with that band for a while. Back then, for people that don't know, like that's the era of the hip hop band. The Roots had had really gotten huge, and then it was easier if you could rap and you could have a band, you could play more gigs because you could play rock shows and you could play hip hop shows. You'd end up getting booked for more rock shows generally, but but like groups like you guys, Audible Mainframe, Eclectic, whatever, and then, obviously turned into Bad Rabbits, and then, Hood Official. I remember there was a bunch of them, and you guys were always playing, like a weekend gig everywhere. It might not be the biggest venue, but it's some local bar down the road, but you'd be playing.
Yeah, no, we were busy, for a few years. We took any gig, really. We were just like, we were young. We were just trying to get out there and just play, and we were having a blast. And it's funny you say that too, because like we never really fit in anywhere being a live hip hop band. It was like we were too hip hop for the rock shows, and then like we do the rap shows, and people would be like, "What are those things that they're holding with the strings and shit?" And then like, but where we really got in was with like the jam band festival scene, man. Like we did Strange Creek and Wormtown and a bunch of different festivals, and playing in the medical cabins at like 2 a.m. with a bunch of people raging out. That was kind of like, I was like, I don't know if it's gonna get much better than this. This is it, So we did that.
Yeah, you guys, the jam band scene.
Yeah.
Which is still a huge scene. It's morphed into different types of sounds. It's like jam band, electronica. There's just straight jam. There's rock. There's all different levels to it now.
Yeah.
But it's still a world that's huge.
Yeah. I haven't been to too many of those festivals since I got sober, but I'm sure it's still going on.
So let's talk about, you got the band going, but let's talk about you now. You start getting your solo career kind of going, and you start recording what I'd say is a frenzy, because you you stopped putting out material nonstop. I mean, I remember you go from putting out almost every time I see you, you have a new CD. Let's talk about your mentality at that point.
Shout out to CDs, by the way.
Yeah, like burn CDs.
Like, yeah. Well, you know, man, I don't know. I like to stay busy, and it's not like when you're in a band, you can't really, at least back then in the early 2000s, at least in my experience, it's like you couldn't just hop in the studio and record a bunch of songs with the band. It was like, it was a process to really make an album with a band. So, but now it was starting to become easier to record like rap music in someone's house, you know, in somebody's kitchen. Or so I remember like my first album I did in Mission Hill with a dude named Jeep Jack and Record Company Records, which is also the Yukon.
Record, hold on, Record Company
Yeah,
Records.
RCR Record Company.
Best name ever.
Yeah, it was cool, man. It was that kid Jeep Jack. He was ahead of his time. You know, he knew it. He that was kind of his claim to fame. He was like, I remember it was like 2002, and he made shirts that said 2004, and he's like, dude, this is my shit now. I'm in 2004 right now, you know. But like, yeah, like even like we would put out little albums and compilations and shit. And we would put it in, instead of like a jewel case, we put it in like a DVD case, and just like kind of funky little presentations. And we would do shows at the Howard Johnson's on Boylston. They had like a Chinese restaurant in the back, so we would do crazy shows in there, and it was like some bugged out shit. But it was cool. It was different, and it was unique, you know. But yeah, now at this point, it's starting to get easier to record, and like you didn't really have to get in like a big studio and pay big money for studio time and shit like that. Like if you knew a dude that had a few beats and a mic and a computer, like, you know, things were starting to progress in like that direction, you know. So, you know, that's why I did my first album, Sound Hungry, and I did the first My Man's in Them album with the Yukon MC. Shout out to the Yukon if he's in here somewhere.
I love that. I one of the first shows we did together was actually a Leedz show. Was the My Man's in Them show, I think.
Yeah.
And let's talk about your relationship with Yukon. Well, how did you meet Yukon, and how did that all happen? Because
you know, he was friends with this kid Jeep Jack, and I started recording with him, and I did one joint with him called Mind Smoke, and then I think I was still a teenager, like 18 or 19.
Yeah.
Glenn's a few years older than me.
Just a few.
Yeah, a few. We won't get into the particulars, but I kind of like, you know, I seen him at a show or two, and then I was kind of hoping to like get in with this crew, you know, because they had already had a couple projects out, and they were playing a couple shows, and I was just kind of new and trying to get in, you know. And I think I had a copy of a song that he did called
the only song he put out.
I don't even, but it was around the time when he put out the Sweet Baby record, which actually came out on vinyl.
That's the only song he ever put out.
Is it? I don't know. We have to ask. I think
it is.
B-side was with Insight, Lethal Weapon, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe, I don't know. But so he did this other song, but I heard it because I was in the studio with Jeep Jack. Played it for me. Like, it's funny because I was just talking a little shit about like remixing songs, and like how it's funny, like when a rapper like is like, yo, I want to remix that. It's like, well, what do you mean? You're gonna remix the beat? Nah, I'm just gonna rhyme on the beat. But that's what I did. Now I didn't even think of it. That's what I did 20 years ago to Glenn. I said, yo, play that beat, and I'm gonna do a verse. And it was kind of like emulating the way that the Yukon did it. I don't know if he's saying false statement down in the comments.
He might be right. I mean, I could be wrong. I thought that was the thing, that only one song came out, because Yukon is the greatest rapper to never put anything out.
Yeah.
That was always his claim to fame, in my opinion.
Sure, sure. But either way, I forget exactly the details. It's been quite a while, but um, eventually, I think we ended up in the studio together. I said, "Yo, I seen you around." He said, "Yo, I seen you around." And then like the bond was there. You know, throw a little DJ Frank White into the mix. Jeep Jack, Pointed to Ushers. Mr. Jason and Nabo was around that time. Elation, who was another rapper who he owns the hat store over there in JP, Salmagundi or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But he was really dope. And there was like a crew, Kai, you know, My Art.
Yep. Oh yeah.
My Art and a couple of his crew was rhyming with these guys. So there was a squad over there, and you know, we just started making music like on the regular.
And you were the youngin, right? You were the youngest.
Yeah, I was like the baby over there, and
Yep. So you
also
must have you got you must I can only imagine the old schooling that you might have gotten. You
yeah.
don't know about
Oh,
this era.
you
You
ever
don't
heard?
know about '87.
You ever heard of Black Sheep? Yeah. But, old schooling is a nice way to.
You haven't heard Kumo D's second album?
Yeah. Name one song. Name one. Yeah. Oh, that.
Sorry, I don't. I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't know. I'm like, talk about
I
like,
can only imagine.
yeah,
I can only imagine.
yeah. It was.
I got it too, and I'm a little younger than them, and I got it.
And you know how Glenn is too. Like he won't be shy. Like, cause I mean, the guy's got a lot of hip hop knowledge. He's got a good collection of vinyl, and he's a collector, and he knows his stuff. So like, you know, and I think it's a little bit, you know, I think any of us, like when you're coming up and you're with like the older heads, they're gonna test you and see like what you know. So like, you want to claim this shit, and you want to be down. Like, what do you know?
Yeah.
So it's all right though.
Yeah. That's great. And let's talk about some of the names of those mixtapes. I remember there was the movies one where you just rapped over like movie theme songs. There was Dutch Burner.
Yeah. Yeah.
Give me some other titles of some of those CDs.
Let Me Pet That Kitty. Now things really picked up after the RCR Record Company records when I got with EGADS.
Oh yeah.
In Brighton. Glenn Yukon introduced me to EGADS, and we started working together, and he was like about it. Like anytime he wanted to come chill and make music, like he was in it, you know. So
Oh yeah.
so that's when a lot of material was coming out, and I think we did the second My Man's in Them album called the Better Than Your Album mixtape, and then Let Me Pet That Kitty, The One, Stuff in the Basement, Lava. So that stuff was all popping. And then Lava was when Billy Blaze came into the mix too, and it was weird, like
it's all Cursed Out Productions though at this time. Like everything you and EGADS is Cursed Out Productions, correct?
Yeah, like there was a lot of Cursed Out Productions, and we were just cranking out a lot of material, you know. And movies was a fun one because like movies, we tried to get a little creative with that by like the song titles were all names of like our favorite movies, and the beats were taken from like a song from that movie or the score. So that was like fun, and I've seen it done in recent years, and I'm not saying anybody's biting, but I'm saying did it first. But
I'm not saying you're biting, but you're biting.
You kind of biting, but nah. But who knows? Maybe people did it before us too. I don't know. But that was fun too. And then EGADS was making these crazy videos with like clips from whatever movie that was, and he would somehow find a part of the movie that went along with the lyrics that were not written to the movie at all. So if I said like explosion, he'd like find like an explosion in the movie, and like it was done pretty cool, you know. And then another favorite of mine that I thought got kind of slept on was I Must Be Dreaming, which we made like an audio book, and it was like a little audio movie. where like it was like a story, and every song, like you could go, you click this link, it would take you to this book, and you'd open up to page 1, and that was the first track, and it was a journey about like a rapper that like had a dream, and then like the dream is the rest of the album, and then like you realize that the whole time it was like a dream. But
Yeah, I gotta give it to you. You know, you really put some thought into these themes that you were doing for your albums. You know, which were mixtapes, really, kind of, right? Because it's kind of like the mixtape era where you were doing. Oh, actually, you were pressing up real CDs.
yeah, we were pressing up CDs, and like
Yeah, it wasn't like slimline shit. It was like
they
real
were
CDs.
CDs, and I think the difference was what made them real albums is where, and correct me if I'm wrong, and I've had this discussion. It's funny that King's in here too, because like I've had this discussion with King, because like we both came up kind of in the same era. I will admit, like I had some mixtapes, but I wasn't like heavy into mixtapes, so my understanding of mixtapes is probably not as accurate, or like maybe I could be off, but what I always felt made my projects albums and not mixtapes is that they were done over original production, and they weren't like, I always thought like mixtapes were kind of like you would pick like 20 of the dopest beats that are kind of hot right now and rhyme on those. But I know not every mixtape was like that, but I that's kind of how I looked at it, and I felt like
Yeah, I think you're right for the most part. I mean, sometimes artists that did mixtapes with original production on samples they couldn't clear, it just kept it,
right,
on the street and didn't put it in stores. That was kind of the definition of a mixtape. It's transformed, you know.
right,
It's. I mean, originally mixtapes were just a tape you would make yourself, right? Ozzy Osbourne, next song,
yeah,
Poison, Bruce Springsteen, Weird Al,
exactly, or like
Run DMC.
you'd have to ask a friend. But we'd sit there and listen to 88.9 and wait for that song you heard last week and wait to record it. And then like we had a dude, older brother, used to make the dopest mixtapes, like, and he would be so like proud. He'd be like, "Yo, this is the one," and you couldn't wait to hear the like, his mixtapes, you know. But I also felt like the way at this point when we were making these projects like movies and I Must Be Dreaming and Lava, I was like, these are not only albums, but these are like, and I don't want to sound like, you know, pretentious and nothing, but it's like, these are beyond even albums. I'm like, these are like something else. So I'm like, it's not, I just didn't want to ever be like put in a certain box. I was like, we always strive to do something different, you know, and whether it got noticed on a bigger scale or not, it didn't matter. It was just like every time we went back to the drawing board, we were like, how can we do something that's a little different, you know?
And I think your work ethic in this era is pretty crazy too, because you'd be at all the shows, whether you were performing or not. You were performing a lot with the band, without the band, whatever. Just there, handing out these CDs. This is before Spotify streaming, all that other stuff. So you had to be handing out these CDs, and you were there with them.
I
It
was there.
wasn't like Mateo Getz with like
Well,
a box,
it was
but it
me.
was close.
It was me, Mateo Getz, and Rex all outside,
Yeah.
box of CDs, trying to outsell each other, and you know. But I also, it was more like it was in person, like networking. You know, it was like,
Yeah.
even if you weren't performing, you go out there, you show your face, and you know, MCing can be like a competitive sport. You know, so there was a time where when you're coming up in the scene and you want to be recognized and you want to get your respect, like you get out there, and whether it was like, you know, we used to do battles, or it was just showing up and just being in the spot and being like, listen, like I'm here, and I would see other MCs do it too, and like the MCs would come up to the stage and like get right in the front row and be like watching you, like you're gonna fuck it up or you're gonna kill the mic, like what are you gonna do,
Yeah.
you know, and I like that. I think that's inspirational, you know.
I remember a funny story. You showed up to my house late night. It's me, Slane, a bunch of other people there. I got a little home studio in the back. and you look Slane right in the face. And you're like, I can write a 16 quicker and better than you right now.
That's a true story, man.
Slade's like, I'm not doing this.
Yeah, he's like, you're just trying to get a free feature from me, dude. Like, get away from me.
You're like, yeah.
I was like, well, what's up? Like, at least make
But
a challenge, you know? But there was also like 3:30 in the morning, and we were doing like key bumps out of a fucking dollar bill. And
yeah, so I want to talk about that because with the recording late night, with the lifestyle comes a lot of partying.
Yeah.
And you were not shy to throw that out there. Beers in the hand every set, whatever, blunts, butts, whatever, blow, whatever. You hit it pretty hard, just like me and like a lot of others. How bad does it get? Because it gets bad. When does it get out of control, and how does it get out of control?
Well, it progressed. You know, it was fun for a lot of years, and like I almost wore that as like a badge of honor. Like,
you definitely did. You were definitely one of the MCs that really threw it out there. You were like, I party.
That was my whole persona, and even like the articles like Ferone wrote, or like it was like party, the drinking, potty mouth, swearing, blunt smoking rapper. It was like, that was just who I was. That was just that was who I was. And it was like, okay, if you're doing this thing that like you're supposed to keep it real, like, and I'm pulling my content from who I am, then that's what I came up with a lot, you know. And like UConn used to tease me and say like, you know, when it was kind of getting old and it had progressed into more of a darker addictions and stuff, and he was like, dude, if you still don't think you have an issue with like drinking and smoking weed, like, why don't you go back and listen to your music and see how many fucking times you like reference. And I was like, dude, you know what, I'm not even gonna do that because I know that it's a lot, you know. And but yeah, man, it was fun until it wasn't fun, and it just, for me, like, I don't know, maybe some people can live that lifestyle and continue and go on, and it's fun for them. But it just also, like, I became a dad, and I was still trying to feel it out and say, hey, maybe I can still, you know, party and do my thing and be a dad. And it just wasn't clicking anymore, and I was beginning to lose a lot, and I was beginning to hurt the people like in my life and people that were close to me. So I was like, you know what, man, I'm 32 years old at this point, and I'm like, this just isn't like who I feel like I'm supposed to be. Like, this stuff is getting in my way now. I always looked at it as a creative fuel, you know, like I can do this and drink and go out, and this is going to keep me going and keep me, you know, thriving. And then it became something that was like, I couldn't control it, and I couldn't use it to push me forward anymore. It was something that was holding me back. So I had to find a way to change, you know.
And you did. You got sober.
Yeah.
I remember you towards the end too, man. It was tough because we all knew. Like, I always would tell Glenn, I was like, I'm waiting for Oak. I'm waiting for the phone call for Oak to be sitting next to me, and I just kind of knew, you know. And well, because we partied many times together, so it was like, you know, if you
at least you guys, because I felt like I was kind of the last one to know. Like, I really did. I was like, when it finally happened, I was like, damn, how come nobody told me? They were like, we kind of told you, but you weren't really receptive, you know?
Well, you got pretty bad at the end, you know. You were kind of MIA. You couldn't really have a conversation with you because when you're in that state, it's kind of like you're so secretive and this, that, and the third. It's like you're not really trying to talk about anything, you know.
You're not present and available.
No.
I was not at all, you know. So,
but you get sober, and then, you know, when you get sober, you kind of go on a hiatus for a little bit musically to get your life squared away. And you did everything right. I saw you. It was great watching you go through the journey. You did everything awesome. And you know, you have another kid, right? You have family now. You moved to Rhode Island, and then all of a sudden, you're on the Worst Cooks of America television show.
Yeah, I know,
How the
right?
hell did that happen? With was Bobby Flay and Ann Burrell are the hosts?
The chefs, yeah. I think it's mainly Chef Ann's show, and every season she invites another chef to compete against. So we didn't know on our season who the other chef was going to be, and I'll never forget like the first day of recording when they brought us out, and then they brought her out, and then they brought out Bobby Flay. We were like, oh shit, because like, I grew up watching Food Network for a long time. I love food. I always paid attention, and so it was pretty cool to be in the same room as these guys, and but yeah, that was a trip, man. Actually, it's funny you did a Five More Things impersonation earlier, and that was what got the interest of a casting agent in Los Angeles that reached out to me and was like, "Hey, you want to go on one of these shows?" And I was like, "Yeah, why not?" She was like, I remember her saying like, "You're like Greek, and you're a dad, and you're a construction worker, and you're a rapper, and you're from Boston, and it's great." And I'm like, "Well, if that's what you're looking for, I've never heard of being like pigeonholed into that person, but
Very marketable.
if that's what you want, like I'm that, And so we were supposed to do another show first, and like I'll keep it all the way real, like just because it already happened, and I was kind of hush hush about it. But so we were supposed to do one show, and it didn't work out. And then the next month, she called me. She goes, "What about this Worst Cooks in America show?" And I was, "That sounds great, but I can kind of cook. Like I've been cooking, a little bit, not like professionally, but." And she was like, "Well, what if you couldn't?" Like, wink. I was like, "Oh yeah, I never cooked before, So there was a little bit of acting going on, but I just looked at it as an opportunity. The bag was $25,000. I was like, you know what? My boss was willing to let me take a few weeks off from work, so I was like, let me go try and win this money, And I had a good run, but I made it about 6 episodes, and then I looked next to me, and it was like the hot NFL cheerleader and the priest from Rhode Island, and I'm like, I'm going home today. Like my time.
So the Greek construction worker, dad, Rhode Island guy couldn't compete with the other two. Huh?
No, she was literally like a cheerleader for the Carolina Panthers, and the other dude was literally a priest from Rhode Island. Nice people. But yeah, man. And then I guess I made a dish, and Chef Ann and I didn't really see eye to eye sometimes. Maybe I was out of line a couple times, but she kind of came at me a few times. So I didn't feel like her and I were like either winning. She was going to be the coach and I was going to be the MVP. It just wasn't in the cards, But what actually happened was is when I got sent home from that show, my fiance's mom got real sick. She went in ICU, and she got sick, and she eventually died like a few months later. And it was weird because like on the Uber ride home from the airport, I was talking to the Uber driver, and he was like, and I told him, yeah, money, and he said, well, man, he said, for some reason you're meant to be home right now, like. And then literally like the next day or two was when we found out that she was sick. So it's kind of like life puts you in exactly where you're supposed to be at all times, and it was my time to be here for my family and my fiance, and that was more important than competing on the show. So
absolutely. And from there, you've kind of kicked it back into your high-speed gear, high-speed network, high-speed gear.
Sure,
shout out King Arthur. You did an album with Insight.
Yeah.
And this was good luck. How did that all happen?
That's another one. Shout out to UConn, man. Like that guy over the years has always been like he at this point, I guess it's clear to say like he always believed in me, and he was never ashamed of me, and never like felt embarrassed or threatened or anything by me. It was just always like, yo, this is my guy. Like, he brought me to California my first time, you know, met Paulie Nugent from Lords of Brooklyn. Like, he introduced me to a lot of people, Acrobatic, Lift, all them guys.
Yep.
So Insight was another one. Like, I didn't really know him, and Yukon was doing some work with him, and I had just finished the Bully Mammoth album, and
Yep.
and he was like, why don't you talk to Insight? Or I think he gave Insight a copy of Bully Mammoth, and there was a couple tunes on there, and I got the word back that Insight was digging it. So he was living in Malden at the time, and that was like a really cool chapter, man, in my music journey. That album with Insight, because like, we started it, and it was probably quick. We made it over like maybe a 6-month period, and from when we started it to the time we ended, I remember the last song we did was Bone Marrow on Skeleton, and he was moving out into another house, and all that was left in the studio was his turntable, his computer, and a desk, and there was nothing left. And like, when I started this, his studio was always crazy, like all types of gear,
Oh yeah.
like really nice. And like, the last session was stripped down to like nothing, and that was the last song we did for that album. The album was complete, and so I always look back at that project like with love. You know, not only is he like a legend, he's a guy I was listening to Insight when I was that kid in the woods. You know, when I was 18, 19, taping on ERS, like, you know, the Blast Radius album, that was a couple years later, but, you know, early Insight and Liff and Ack and stuff like that was like, those guys were laying down the foundation as far as I could see. So and he's just such a talented and like cool guy as well. You know Sight, and you got involved on that project, and you helped us out a lot, man. And you were like a awesome ingredient, that you were doing a lot of the stuff that like artists, whether they not know they need to do, but you were that guy that was more business savvy, helping with like the press kit and things like that. So it was cool. Like, we kind of formed a cool little team between me, you, Insight, and EGADS to handle the artwork. And I thought we really rolled out that album. Like, it had cool promo stuff.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah, that was a really awesome experience. Like,
and it's a really good album, man. I think to me, it's one of your best works. You know, I just think. And I think the connection really between you and Insight, the biggest one, obviously musically, is, besides music, creative, is the work ethic. You guys together, I mean, matched each other's workload.
Yeah.
You know, you can bang out verses, he can bang out beats. It was like, bang.
Yeah, he's no joke, man. And it felt right in that aspect too, because like, and it was funny because he was telling me when it came time to mix the album, and we picked the songs, and then we came up with the track list, and he's like, yo, man, don't even worry. He's like, I'm gonna mix this in like an hour. And I was like, okay. So he's like, so I came over. He mixed that album in front of me in like an hour and 20 minutes. Front to back, and it sounds how it sounds. And but like, working with him, like you said, like, it's like effortless. And like, I've worked with people like that over the years, you know, a lot of talented people, incredible musicians, beat makers. And it's cool because like, everybody's a little different, and you kind of click with people differently. But he was one of those people where it was like automatic, like no second guessing, nothing, no weirdness. Just we just cranked it out, you know.
Yeah. I also want to talk about the relationship with Big Dex and the group, the Dunnas, because I think this is another very important group, full of humor. Let's talk about how that all started and how it's been going.
We like to have fun. I think it's important too. Like King pointed out to me a few years ago, like, the Dunnas, like, we try to maintain like that element of fun in hip hop, you know, and it's not like, if you ask me, in my humble opinion, like we don't play around like on the mic. Like if you want to really dissect the rhymes and shit, especially Deese, like I really don't see if you want to go like bar for bar, especially with anyone like around here. People talk about they want those bars over everything. Like who's better than Deese with the bars?
It's
You know,
tough.
it's tough to name one. And like he stepped in the ring and he battled, ripped a few dudes 2 years ago. You know, he was brushed off the battle skills, the battle hat, and but like, so we've always had fun. But I like to think like Deese and I, that's a reflection of like who we are as people. Like when we get together, we're a little goofy. We like to joke around. So like that comes out in the music that you make. Like we're not, you know, pretend to be something that we're not. We're just a couple dudes that love hip hop that have been doing it for a long, long time. And I think that comes out in the music. So I'm just glad like we're still able to make music. Like, because you know how it is, man, in this industry or in our world. You know, people come and go, or like people fade away. You know, they lose the drive, they lose the interest in wanting to do it, or their lives get full of other stuff. And
Yeah.
so Deese is one of those guys. Is like we've been making music. Like our first project was like in '09 or so. Here
I was
we are.
looking at it right now, trying to figure it out.
Yeah, I think all you can eat. I think, and we even go way back. We go before that when he was in E3 and when he was in the camp, and I was doing whatever I was doing. Like it was funny how him and I kind of ended up in the group because we were working with a bunch of other people, and everyone was doing their thing. But like there was something about Deese and me. Like he was very fast, and I was pretty fast, and we got along on a personal level. So it was like eventually you end up with who you're meant to end up with, you know. And and here we are 12, 13 years later, and you know when our wives and the bosses at home let us come out and play, and you know for the couple hours a week we still go out and you know do the damn thing, you know.
The
So
new album, One and Done, it
yeah,
just came out. The new video's great. Get Lost too.
thanks.
Is that his rig? Is that his? Because he's construction too. Is that his digging rig?
Yeah, that's his shop, and that's his.
Yeah.
He's a driller, all day.
Yeah.
I'm a laborer, and you know what's cool about that video, man? Like, I always wanted to make that video.
Yeah.
And I was like, in my mind, I was like, maybe we should do it at my shop. Maybe we should do like half at his shop, half at my shop, or just fucking somewhere. And we ended up doing it at his shop, and he had all the trucks and the equipment and the setting, and shout to Chairman Chow, who you know, he's kind of like, you know, like it's gone in eras. Like, excuse me, started with Jack, then it was like EGAD's era as far as in-house production. Then it was like the Billy Blaze era for a while, and then the last couple of years, Chairman Chow, formerly known as Champ Chuck from Overdog Radio,
Yep.
the young Lord, he's kind of like, you know, he's the guy now. Like we kind of he got the headquarters, and we've been working with him, and he's also branched out into doing videos, and he's just, it's awesome. Like he's another one. Like just seeing him elevate, you know what I mean, and seeing him go from being like, you know, like he was like the host at the radio show, and then he was like hosting some Leedz shows, and then like I seen a few videos of him rhyming, was dope, and then it was like, then he hit me a couple years ago. He's like, yo, I'm making beats now. Like you need to come through. Like you need to rap on a couple of these beats. It was like, all right, whatever, Champ Chuck from the fucking radio. I'll check out your beats, and but man, like he
Did a whole album with him.
yeah, we did the Loner 1. The Loner 2 is also done, and the Loner 3 might actually even be done. So we just figuring out how we're gonna roll all these out. But
Who produced this One and Done Dunnas album?
so this is my man. He's actually in the room with us now, Chef
Boogie?
Bogey. I believe it's pronounced Bogey,
Chef Bogey.
like a stogie. He's a real chef too.
I hope so.
we about to see what he's got though, because we're gonna have a sandwich battle coming up. But I can't say too much about that. But yeah. So Bogey was Chairman Chow's man, and every time I'd be at the studio, I'd go see Chairman Chow once a week over there, and he'd be like, "Yo, you got to rock on one of my man's beats," and he was playing some beats, and I was like, "Hey, cool, you know." And then he played me this one beat that turned into the song Darjeeling, which is on the One and Done. It's track 5. And we actually released Darjeeling as a Lucy at the end of last year. And it was just dope. So our approach for this Dunnas album was not like all the other Dunnas albums where it was like me and Deese on every song. So basically I did like 5 or 6 solo songs on Bogey beats, and then Deese did 5 or 6 solo songs on Bogey beats. And then we each featured on like each side or whatever, you know, and then we released it as one full length, or I guess you would consider it a full length. But yeah, man, and that's just an example of like a project that we had other projects going on at the same time, and then we did that one, and we were like, this came out really dope, so like let's put this out now. And plus, the Dunnas haven't put nothing out in years before One and Done, so we were kind of like, let's put this out, let people know that the Dunnas are still around, you know. So that was how that happened.
Well, the Dunnas are definitely still around.
Yeah, yeah.
And we look forward to you guys on the Easy Money release party. It's going to be good to get everybody back in the building. And
mostly everybody.
What'd you say?
Said mostly everybody.
What do you mean mostly?
The vaccination thing.
Oh yeah.
But
I'm curious how that's going to be enforced at the Middle East.
No, I was really, what are they going to do? I'm like, we've been sneaking in places with fake ID my whole life. Like, well, when I needed to, you know. But I don't know. Maybe we shouldn't talk about it, but we'll see what happens.
Well, best of luck to everybody involved.
Right.
Vaccine or not.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm going to wrap this up, Oak. But man, this is great. Great talking to you, man. It's good to catch up and go through this time travel. We've known each other for a while, man. We're going to still be seeing each other and hanging out and talking more. We see each other in other areas too.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's always a pleasure, and I'm happy, and I'm looking forward to getting back to business and doing some shows and stuff.
Absolutely, man. I want to thank everybody for tuning in to Leedz Edutainment Podcast with special guest Oak Lonetree, and we'll see you later.
Peace.
Peace.